Hello viewers, welcome again to today's lesson. This is the solution space, the platform where mathematics is made easy and simple for everyone to understand and enjoy. In this video, I want to continue with the set that I started with you in the first video. In the first video, we started learning about set where we handled the simplification of set as I've written on the board, simplification of set. That's what we started with in the first video. So I did a detailed explanation on what set is, and also we looked at other stuffs that will help us to be able to simplify set, okay? And that is a perfect square. I taught you what a perfect square is in the first video, because without your knowledge on what a perfect square is, you cannot handle the simplification of set. So I did all those explanation in the first video, okay? So this is just a continuation to solve another example with you for you to get a better understanding. So the first video lays the foundation, okay? So you need to watch the first video. When we started this topic, I said that most students struggle with set because they don't get a good foundation to the topic, okay? So I took my time to lay a very good foundation, okay? And I've done that in the first video, the basic knowledge and the understanding that you need to be able to handle simplification of set. I've done all those explanations in the first video, which is very important to know, okay? Because without your knowledge on what a perfect square is, you cannot handle the simplification of set. And also I've done an explanation on what set is, okay, all in the first video. That's why I'm encouraging you to watch the first video so that you get the foundation to be able to handle this session as well, because this is just a continuation. Because as you can see from the board, this is example 2, so it means we've done example 1 in the first video, okay? So do well to watch the first video so that you can easily handle this session as well. And please don't forget to like the videos and also share them after watching. So let's go ahead and solve the example 2 that I have on the board. So example 2, it says, without using calculator, simplify A, square root of 24, and B, square root of 72. Okay, so square root of 24 is a set, okay, and I've explained what set is to you in the first video. Square root of 72 is a set, and we've done all those explanations in the first video what a set is, okay? So the question says, without using a calculator, we should simplify the square root of 24 and also the square root of 72, okay? Actually, when you type this on the calculator will give you a straight answer, okay? But we are not going to use the calculator, okay? We are going to solve it, then we are going to arrive at the same answer that the calculator will give, okay, when we type it on the calculator. So the calculator gives a straight answer when you type this on the calculator, okay? So we are not going to use the calculator. I'm going to go through the process with you, okay? Then we'll arrive at the same answer that the calculator will give, okay? Since without using calculator, so let's do that, okay? So now let's start with the A, okay? So let me write my solution, okay? So and do it together. So I have square root of 24, okay? So now in the first video I explained to you that for you to be able to simplify this one, you have been given square root of 24 to simplify. So you look for two numbers which can multiply to give you back the 24, but those two numbers, one of it needs to be a perfect square, okay? Please hope you remember, okay? So let me repeat it one more time. I say that you look for two numbers that can multiply to give you the 24, but the two numbers, one of it needs to be a perfect square. And I hope you remember what a perfect square is. I've done those explanations in the first video. That's why I'm encouraging you to watch the first video, okay? So we know that we have many numbers that can multiply to give you the 24, okay? You can think of many two possible numbers that can multiply to give you the 24. So let's write all of them down. Then now we'll pick the one which has a perfect square in it, okay? So I don't want you to get confused. So let's take our time and write down all the two possible numbers that can multiply to give the 24, okay? Then afterwards we'll pick the one that has a perfect square in it, okay? So let's go ahead. So we can think of 1 times 24, okay. 1 times 24 gives 24, okay, hope you agree. Okay, we can also think of 2 times 12. 2 times 12 gives 24, hope you agree with me. Then we can also think of 3 times 8. 3 times 8 also gives 24. Then we can also think of 4 times 6, okay. So 4 times 6 also gives 24. So all these two possible numbers can multiply to give 24, okay. So all these numbers can multiply to give 24, but we need the one which has a perfect square in it, okay. So let's start with the first one. 1 times 24, it has a perfect square in it. So let me identify it. So this one has a perfect square in it, the 1 times 24, because 1 is a perfect square, okay. Now let's come to the 2 times 12. 2 times 12, there isn't any perfect square there, okay, because the 2 is not a perfect square. The 12 is also not a perfect square. Now the 2 is not a perfect square because you not get the square of any number or integer to give you 2, okay. So 2 is not a perfect square. Again, the reason why 2 is not a perfect square is because you will not get the square of any number or integer that will give you 2. So 2 is not a perfect square. 12 is not a perfect square because you will not get the square of any number or integer that will give you 12. So 12 is not a perfect square. Let's check the 3 times 8 as well. 3 times 8, the 3 is not a perfect square because you not get the square of any integer that will give you 3. So 3 is not a perfect square. And the 8 too is not a perfect square because you not get the square of any integer that will give you 8. So 8 is not a perfect square. Okay, now let's come to the 4 times 6. 4 times 6, we have a perfect square inside, which is the 4. 4 is a perfect square because 2 square gives 4. Okay, so the 4 is a perfect square. So let's identify this one as well. Okay, so now this one and this one is what you are going to consider. Okay, the 2 times the 12 and the 3 times the 8, it doesn't contain any perfect square, so we will not use them. Okay, we want the one which has a perfect square in it, and that is the 1 times the 24 and the 4 times the 6. Okay, and I've explained to you that we cannot pick the 1 times the 24, okay, because I said that we don't pick the one which has 1 as a perfect square in it. Again, we do not pick the one which has 1 as a perfect square in it, because if you pick the 1 times the 24, using it to simplify, it will still leave you at the same place, which is the root of 24. You cannot go further. Okay, so we pick a value in which when the square root sign affects it, we can simplify further. Okay, so in simple terms, we don't pick the one which has 1 in it as a perfect square. We don't pick that one. So this one, we could not pick it. Okay, so we'll not pick this one. The one we'll pick will be the 4 times the 6. Okay, so the 4 times 6 is what we are going to use. Please hope the explanation is clear enough and you understand it. Okay, so let's go ahead and simplify further. So the square root of 24, this 24, we'll replace it with 4 times 6. Okay, so I said that you look for 2 numbers that can multiply to give you back the 24, but in those 2 numbers, one of it needs to be a perfect square. Okay, and we've established that it's going to be 4 times the 6. So we are going to write the square root of, then the 24, we replace it with 4 times 6. Please hope you agree with me up to this point. So let's go ahead. So the 24, I'm going to write it as square root of 4 times 6. Okay, please hope you understand up to this point. So now the square root sign affects everything here. Okay, so we can simplify further. So the square root sign will affect the 4 and also affect the 6. Okay, so I explained this to you in the first video. Okay, because the square root sign affects everything here. So the square root sign affects the 4 and also affects the 6. So we can separate them. Okay, so you can write this one as square root of 4 times, okay, you bring your multiplication sign because the sign is multiplication, times square root of 6. Okay, so that's how to go about it. Now the square root of 4, we know the answer. Okay, square root of 4 gives 2. Okay, so let's simplify it further. So square root of 4 is 2, so I write my 2 there. Okay, so equals to 2 times, now the square root of 6, we will not get a whole number as an answer for square root of 6, so you leave it, okay? If you are not getting a whole number as an answer for it, you don't touch it, leave it, okay? Because the square root of 6, you will not get a whole number as an answer for it, so you just leave it like this. So square root of 6, you leave it like this, okay? So now let's go ahead and simplify further by multiplying, okay? So it's going to be 2 times square root of 6, and 2 times square root of 6 will give you 2 root 6, okay? So this becomes your final answer for simplifying the square root of 24, and I've explained why it is 2 root 6. The multiplication, I hope you understand the multiplication. I've done a detailed explanation in the first video, okay? I said that this 2 multiplies the coefficient of the square root sign, okay? The coefficient of the square root of 6 is 1. Okay, so it is 2 times the coefficient. Since there's no specified number here, it means it is 1. Okay, the coefficient of is 1. So 2 times the 1, 2. So 2 root 6, they are multiplying. That's how to multiply it. Okay, now it is like this. For example, if you have 2 times, let's say s, 2 times s gives us 2s. Hope you all agree. How do you get the 2s? The 2 multiply the coefficient of the s here. Okay, the coefficient of the s here is 1. So 2 times the 1, 2. So 2 times the s, 2s. Okay, so the same knowledge is what we are applying to multiply this 2 times root 6. So you consider the root 6 as your variable. Okay, so 2 times the root 6 gives 2 root 6. That's how to conduct the multiplication. Okay, so if it was to be, let's say, 2 times let's say 6s, it would have given us 12s. Hope you agree with me. So 2 times the 12, 2 times the 6, 12. And so we are getting 12s. Okay. So if we had, let's say, 2 times 3 root 2. Okay, the 2 will multiply the coefficient of the root 2. The coefficient of the root 2 is 3. So it's going to be 2 times the 3, which is 6. So we are going to get 6 root 2. Okay, because here the coefficient of the root 2 has been specified to be 3. This one, the coefficient is 1 because there isn't any specified number there. So it's 2 times the 1. Okay, so this one, it is 3. So it's going to be 6 root 2. Okay, so that's how you handle the multiplication of Z. Okay, so this is the answer for simplifying the square root of 24. It gives 2 root 6. Okay, so let me clean this one from here. Hope the explanation was clear enough and you understood it. Okay, so that's it. That is the answer. This is the final answer for simplifying the square root of 24. You get 2 root 6. If you type this on the calculator, you get the same answer as 2 root 6. Okay, so let's go ahead and tackle the B also. Okay, so let me clean this one from here. Okay, so the B, I have square root of 72. Okay, so you are going to follow the same process. Okay, so you look for 2 numbers that can multiply to give you back the 72, but that 2 numbers, one of it needs to be a perfect square. Please, the same understanding, the same knowledge, that's what you are going to apply. Okay, so you look for 2 numbers that can multiply to give you the 72, but those 2 numbers, one of it needs to be a perfect square. And don't forget, I said that you don't pick the one which has 1 in it as a perfect square. No, you don't pick that one. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let me write my solution, okay, and let's do it together. So I have a square root of 72. Okay, so now those 2 numbers that comes in mind, okay, will be 9 times 8. 9 times 8 gives 72. So 9 is a perfect square. Okay, so you can use 9 times 8. Okay, please hope you agree with me. So if you are struggling, just list all the possible 2 numbers that can multiply to give you the 72 down. Then you select the one which has a perfect square in it, as we did with this one. I believe by now you have a good understanding of it. That's why I'm jumping straight away by not writing all the possible 2 numbers down. Okay, so those 2 numbers that can multiply to give you 72 but has 1 in it as a perfect square is 9 times 8. Okay, 9 times 8 gives 72, and then 9 is a perfect square. So in place of the 72, I'll write 9 times 8. So bring your square root. Okay, so your square root, and 72, I write it as 9 times 8. So 9 times 8. Hope you agree with me. Okay, now we said that just as we did with this one, okay, the square root sign affects everything here. So the square root will affect the 9 and also affect the 8 as well. Okay, so we can break them down, we can separate them. So you can write it as square root of 9 times square root of 8. Okay, I hope you agree with me up to this point. Okay, now let's go ahead and simplify further. The square root of 9, we know the answer. Square root of 9 is 3. Okay, so square root of 9, let's bring our 3 there, is 3 times. Now, the square root of 8, you will not get a whole number for 8 as an answer, but actually we can reduce it. Okay, so the square root of 8, if you punch it on the calculator, it will give you a simplified answer in set form. Okay, so this square root of 8, though we cannot get a whole number as an answer for it, we can actually reduce it. Okay, so again, we are going to look for two numbers that can multiply to give us the 8, but those two numbers, one of it needs to be a perfect square, and those two numbers will be 4 times 8, 4 and 8. So 4 times 2 is 10. Okay, so the two numbers will be 4 times 2. Okay, 4 times 2 gives 8, and the 4 is a perfect square. Okay, again, I'm saying that we cannot get a whole number as an answer for this 8. Okay, but actually the root 8, we can reduce it, we can simplify it. Okay, so we look for two numbers that can multiply to give us the 8, but those two numbers, one of it needs to contain a perfect, now one of it needs to be a perfect square. Okay, so we can think of 4 times 2. 4 times 2 gives 8, and the 4 is a perfect square. Okay, so in place of the 8, I'll write 4 times 2. Hope you agree with me up to this point. So my 3, you bring the multiplication sign here, and then root 8, you can write it as 4 times 2. Hope you agree with me. Okay, so let's simplify further. So bring your 3, which is here, your 3 is there, bring the multiplication sign, which is there. Now we are going to apply the same knowledge that we did with this one. Okay, so the square root sign affects everything here. So the square root sign will affect the 4 and also affect the 2 as well. Please hope you agree with me. So we can break it down just like we did for this one. We break it down to root 9 times root 8. So this square root sign, it will affect everything in here. So we are going to break it down. It's going to be square root of 4 times square root of 2. Okay, please hope you understand. So it's going to be square root of 4 times square root of 2. Okay, I hope you understand up to this point. Okay, now let's go further. I'll have my 3 is here times, okay, now square root of 4, we know the square root of 4 to be 2. So let's write the answer for square root of 4 there, which is 2. So 3 times 2, then times the square root of 2, which is here. Okay, now let's go ahead and simplify further. Okay, so we are going to have 3 times 2 is 6. Okay, and the 6 will multiply the root 2. Okay, let's do it step by step. I don't want you to get confused. Okay, so let me continue from this side. I hope you can see. Okay, so 3 times the 2 gives 6. Okay, so I have my 6 times, okay, so 6 times root 2. Okay, please hope you are following. Okay, so I have 6 times root 2. Okay, please hope you can see. Here's it. 3 times the 2, it gives 6. So I've written my 6 there times the root 2, which is here. Okay, so now let's simplify this one. I have 6 times root 2. We are multiplying. How does the multiplication happen? I've explained it from this side. Okay, that this 6 multiplies the coefficient of the root 2. The coefficient of the root 2 here is 1. Okay, so 6 times the 1 is 6. So 6 root 2. Are you getting it? So we are going to get our final answer to be 6 root 2. Okay, so this is our final answer for simplifying the square root of 72. So if you type square root of 72 on the calculator, it will give you a straight answer as 6 root 2. And this is the process you need to go through to get that answer. I hope the explanation was clear enough and you understood it as well. Thank you, and please don't forget to like the video and also share them as well. I'll be back on your way again in another video whilst we solve more examples on this. Bye bye.